Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, joins us at the Indianapolis Scouting Combine. Gabe Henderson and Paul Allen. And I'm sure Paul Charchi and Ben Lieber and I asked you this last year, but I can't remember the answer. Your combine, when you were here, San Diego State University, before Bill went in there and got you in the third round, right?
Yep.
Yeah, what was it like?
I remember it was much different, first of all. The schedule was much different. I was joking with some of the guys we had in our formal interviews. You know, this is a piece of cake now. I mean, back then it was, you were up much earlier. They're still up later depending on when their formals are and things like that, but they get the time throughout the week to kind of piece themselves together a really good week and then finish it strong with the workout. And then they actually, with it being a PM kind of made for TV type of thing now, they get the night after to kind of decompress before they go back and start getting ready for their pro days. But for me personally, loved everything about getting to know these teams. And you walk into rooms and you're meeting with Bill Belichick. You're meeting with, general managers and in some cases team owners and things, and really getting exposed to what this is all going to be about very quickly. And you learn very quickly that you either are going to get with it and be somebody that presents yourself in a way that makes teams excited about adding you to their roster, or you're going to have some work to do. So I think a lot of these guys are prepared. Agents do a great job preparing these guys, but we have our own little ways of finding out who these guys are all about.
Has there been a change with the informal / formal meetings? What I mean is, I thought somebody told me yesterday that you had to like cram them all in one day. Was it like Monday or something? Is there a change with that or not?
No, it's we started Monday night, and then we basically just wrapped up a morning session. You'll have anywhere from 8 to 12, depending on the schedule. Then we'll come back tonight and go from 8 to 11 p.m., and that'll kind of be the day for the next 2 days.
Okay.
And then we wrap up formals tomorrow night, and then have Friday and Saturday to really start honing in on these workouts all the way through Sunday.
Got it.
KO, I'm still not over that Giants loss, just simply because of how it happened. But at the same time, it's the business. You got to move on. You got to continue to push forward. And I asked Kwesi yesterday, I'm like, how does Kevin just turn off coaching? Like and Kwesi basically said, he's like, okay, William, you got to get to the point where you just switch from coach to evaluator.
William,
how is that process for you? Like, how do you turn that switch off so quick?
Well, the way Kwesi and I have kind of built, built our relationship, it's really never off, and that's one of the things in year one. Making sure a huge priority to me was making sure that I was. Everything Kwesi needed me to be, from a assistant on the personnel side to, I really view myself, and he's asked me to kind of be his right-hand man where that goes. And that's really important because a lot of people chuckled and, hey, they're using these words like collaboration, communication, the things that
margin rules.
Hey, we keep on saying these things. Well, you got to back it up with how you operate.
Right.
And I think that's what Vikings fans can be really excited about is, 1 year, a little over a year ago, Kwesi and I started working together, and I could tell you after a year of doing it together, I feel even stronger about him, his leadership style, what we're going to be able to accomplish together. And then ultimately, it's always self-reflection mode. Yeah. So whether you ever turn off that coaching thing or take off that coaching hat, I don't think that's possible for me. But what it does allow me to do is take a step back and really evaluate, starting with me, my coaching staff, and then ultimately taking a long look at how we can improve as a football team that won 13 games. And quite honestly, we felt great about a lot of things this year. But as you said, Gabe, 31 teams are all talking the same way. It didn't end the way they wanted to have happen. So now we get to control what we can in our efforts to improve our team.
Well, taking off the coaching cap is absolutely possible for you, and I know that because last night in my room here, I watched a Vikings Voyage, and you were talking about the precious time when you're away from the facility, away from the combine, away from the coaching cap. It all goes to your kids, and it all goes to family time. So is that like a deep breath where you're like, okay, I got a lot of things to do, but I got a lot of love to give here, and you just kind of transition into it.
Yeah, I would like to think it's a deep breath, but it means a lot to me. So anytime I get the opportunity to make sure I'm being a great husband, being a great father, I know how important that was to me growing up, to have great parents that were so influential on who I became as a man.
And grandfather who came to the games.
That's exactly right. So I just it's so important to me, and I have so much admiration for my wife Leah and what she's able to do, because it is a family all-in approach to doing this thing the right way. I think our players feel that. I think our organization feels that. And ultimately, it takes a special kind of person, to truly, in a lot of ways, lead our family. When I am dedicating so much time to the Minnesota Vikings, and then what you start to feel is they're so invested.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hardest part. It's, Gabe, you took that loss against the Giants hard. It took, I don't know if my oldest, Caden, he had tears in his eyes for 2 or 3 days after.
I get it.
They start to learn about just how much it means to Dad, and inherently how much it ends up meaning to them.
Wow.
And we care so much, and we love everything about the opportunity that was presented to our family a little over a year ago. And like I said, whether it's Kwesi, whether it's the Wilfs, whether it's our roster, our great players, our coaches, I just feel so fortunate to be in this situation. So you feel ultimately too much is given, much is required. And I take that, I wake up every morning with that feeling of what can I do today to help the Minnesota Vikings be a better organization. And a lot of times it starts with me looking inward, like I've said many, many times, and it's not a cliche, because I do feel like I have the opportunity to have a positive impact on so many people around our organization, and hopefully our fan base feels what we were able to build within the walls of our building this year, because I challenged our team. Let's let it – it's great to have this feeling in the walls of our facility, but we want it to be on a stage for the whole world to see, for our great fans to feel our team and connected and feel like they're every bit a part of it with us. And I certainly felt that all the way down to the clock hitting zeros, against the Giants. And why it hurt so much is there was an expectation that just how special this year was. How special could it be from there? So when it ends, you're never prepared for it. I've talked to some of the greatest coaches that I've ever been around since that game, and they all say the same thing. Those things will stick with you for a long time, but let it fuel you to become a better version of yourself for all those around you.
Hey, with that answer.
Amen. And I love how it fueled you, because, 2022, the moniker was competitive rebuild. That was the first thing Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said. And then fast forward to this year after the season, championship standard.
Yeah.
How did you achieve that this week with the NFL Combine?
Yeah, I think, it started with our process when the season immediately ended. We've been in full evaluation mode of every aspect of how we played, who we had on the field, and ultimately what things look like moving forward. And there's a lot of different variables to that. But once again, what can we control this week? There's a lot of great prospects here, guys that have worked very hard their whole lives to get this opportunity. So you've got to meet that and match that with a level of enthusiasm. And hopefully, when we have these formal interviews, since some of our coaches are having those informal interviews, I've told them, hey, you never know when you could be talking to the next Justin Jefferson or, the next Christian Darrisaw. So I want these guys to embrace every player here, every player we get a chance to speak with, allow them to get a piece of what the Minnesota Vikings organization is, because ultimately we do get to select players. We get to pick the players, but you want them, when they hear their name called, late April, you want them to be, clapping in the air, not just because they've achieved the dream of becoming an NFL football player, but shoot, not only do I get to become an NFL player, I get to go to that Minnesota place where I can't wait to get around those guys. I can't wait to get around my teammates and those coaches, and ultimately they hit the ground running with no roadblocks in place for them to reach their highest potential.
Kevin O'Connell, coach of the Minnesota Vikings from Indianapolis and the NFL Scouting Combine. And, from what you know now or learned, maybe through your career coaching in the NFL, the art of handicapping players you covet while realizing trades take place. So, therefore, can you get married to an opinion and or a player, but if there's a trade, it might, obviously you have alternatives, but there's an art to that, right? Recognizing trades will happen.
Yeah, I think, PA, the big thing, too, is in this salary cap era, it's great to fall in love with all the players that you have an opportunity to evaluate, and the guys you truly feel will fit, with what you want to do, both schematically, culturally, and then ultimately how it all builds together year in and year out to truly create something that can sustain. But ultimately, we have to be evaluators of not only the player themselves, but how the group itself fits and,
Yeah.
and where you can find the word value has to mean something.
Right.
You have to be able to find guys that the rest of the league will value, but where. And then if there is a trade and it changes the dynamic of your depth chart and ultimately where holes and voids may live, you have to find a way to put the best possible team together. Depth is a huge thing that Kwesi and I talk a lot about because you guys saw it this year, the ebbs and flows, whether it was up front, at the corner position, whatever it was, when those things hit you, it's great to all sit there and bang the table and say we've got a next man up mentality, but you better feel really strongly about that next man up, and you better pour into developing that player. You better have resources in your building, which luckily the Wilfs provide us with so many great resources. We've got great people, whether it's Josh Hinks, Tyler Williams, all the great people that work with our players, every single day. We feel really good about what we've been able to set up now. That championship standard you talk about, Gabe, now it's can we hold ourselves accountable to that line?
Yeah.
And we've got to establish what that line is. And then ultimately know we're building our culture, and that's something that's evolving every single day. Yeah. But I think the standard on the culture side and how we want our building to feel, that's there. And to do that within a year of being here feels really, really good. Now we get to push, and now we get to push ourselves, starting with me, to find that championship standard, and then can we live above that line? And those who are having trouble, how do we coach them? How do we develop them to make sure we've got all 53 guys pulling it in the right direction?
KO, Kevin O'Connell, head coach, Minnesota Vikings. I know, collaboration is one thing that, you and Kwesi have to have in order to build this championship standard. But outside of wearing sweatpants as head coach and GM, do you have an example of how you and Kwesi have collaborated, how the collaboration has grown to this point?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if there's a lot of, I don't see very many head coaches and GMs just attached to the hip walking around Indianapolis. And Kwesi, if they've seen me, they've probably seen him very close by. We don't just like doing football together. We don't just like, handling the great details that are very important to our team together. It's about, his wife Chelsea, and it's about Chelsea and my wife Leah have become really close. And we feel ultimately invested in one another as friends, as people. We rely on each other. He's been there for me so many times over. In your first year as a head coach, as a play caller, trying to do things the way we do things, it's taxing at times. And he has a great feel for understanding the timing of when he might need to pick me up, when he might need to give me that little pat on the back, or vice versa. And I tend to go the other way this time of year, and that's my job for him now. He pours everything he has with his staff into the evaluation mode. I challenge our coaches to be extensions of those guys, be some of the, on the football side, the information fillers, to allow our personnel department, our coaching staff to mesh together in a way where there is no indecision amongst our draft room, amongst our organization, what direction we're moving forward with, and ultimately that's how you make sure you maximize your opportunities.
Your offense was and is the team's identity, at least at this stage of the equation.
For sure.
What do you expect to be even better next year?
Offensively, I just think it's things will by the end of the season and hopefully on into this next year, things were becoming second nature to some of our core players, and that included a guy like T.J. Hawkinson, who really only played 10 games for us and had such an incredible impact. But now we get to pour into it, and we're not teaching things for the first time.
Yep.
You ask anybody in this league, players and coaches, the multiple opportunities you get to learn things and be able to apply your own repetition to it, not watching L.A. Rams tape to learn an offense. Justin Jefferson is watching himself. When we go install 1 on through install 10 in our passing game, everything that we're going to ask of him is going to be about taking something very, very good, taking something that he did at an elite world-class level, and now we get to fine-tune it and make it better and have that. That's where the collaboration comes in. Well, Justin, what did you think about, how we were coaching this route? Well, Coach, I love it, but I would love to have, one more revolution. Maybe we're coaching at 14 yards. Let's get to 18 yards. Let me open up my stride. Let me attack a little bit more. Let me feel that double team coming from the second level, and this is how we're going to do it. And ultimately, then our playbook I tell people all the time, don't PDF that thing because we're going to need to make some adjustments and tweaks and changes to that. So save yourself some time and just keep that thing pliable and moldable because away we go.
How do now that you've torn you've torn everything apart? You and Kirk, like in games, and the pressure cooker's on blast, and you guys may see things differently. How is that handled in those situations?
Well, I think it starts with how you coach it. And Kirk has been, for a guy that's been in so many different systems, and people forget. I mean, going back, really the last time he had the same voice, same play caller in his ear was really Sean McVay 15 into 16. So that goes back a long time. And
that really matters, right?
It does. And he pours his process. He's such a process-driven guy. He's going to learn it. He's going to know. He's going to be able to walk in there on a Thursday when I give him a 25-word play with a check and this protection audible. He's going to learn it and pour himself into that. And then ultimately, by the time we kick off on Sunday, he's got complete ownership of it. But now – this is where it all starts to me, where you've had the exposure, Kirk. This is what ultimately we want to accomplish, and now you take the reins. You take this and truly craft it to make it, something we've built together. And that's when, the special players that we have on our roster, we're going to try to do that in a lot of places and really allow these guys to grow. And I've challenged B-Flow on the other side. Hey, that's what got me really excited about Brian was just – his experience, his understanding of just multiple personnel, his ability to use traits of players. Hey, let's see what these guys do well, and then we'll craft our defense based upon the core fundamentals and characteristics of how we want to play. And I just loved everything about that whole process.
Young guys, are there what young guys on this Minnesota Vikings team are you most excited to see take a step from year one to year two?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them. I think about some of our draft picks from a year ago, guys like Brian Asamoah. I'm excited, Lewis Seen, just to update fans. I mean, this guy's been in the building every single day. He's attacking his rehab. He's ahead of – he's knocked everything out of the park so far. This guy's got an understanding now of what it's going to – what the next step for me is. He knows there was some time lost, but he's not going to allow that to hold him back from – really hitting the ground running when he's good to go. You look on the offensive side with, a guy like Ty Chandler, who fans didn't get to see a whole lot of. I think Ty's going to continue to take that, that growth and next step and understanding that, every single week I'd go into the pass installs and I'd be like, hey, it might not be you now, but just start envisioning and picturing yourself. And I thought Dalvin was so great for him. Dalvin Cook and Alex were so great. In their mentoring of him, and we had that across the board, receiver room, running back room, cornerback, with Patrick Peterson, and the back end with Harry, the guys up front. It was built in a way where it's great to inherit great leadership, but I wanted to empower that leadership, and I wanted it to be felt. And we don't build the culture we did in year one without the true ultimate buy-in of all those guys, but then their willingness to, allow them to capitalize on what we tried to provide for them. And I just, I feel very fortunate to have those guys. But there's a lot of young guys, Gabe. There's a lot of guys we're excited about. There's veteran players that I know are chomping at the bit to get back going. When it ends the way it did for this team and everybody saw it going a little bit differently than it did, April 17th can't come fast enough.
Now, having the right quarterback to win the Super Bowl clearly is key, and it's my personal belief that the Minnesota Vikings have that in Kirk Cousins. Other side, when you were with the Rams, you had Aaron Donald. When you were in Washington, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and those cats.
Yep.
Is finding the right pass rushing interior defensive lineman, 3 technique or whatever, has that become nearly as hard as finding the right quarterback?
Well, I think I'm
talking about the draft.
Yeah, it's a great question, PA, because I think the quarterback position will always be its own unique thing because the entire organization, the franchise, in many cases rests in the hands of that player. And there's only so much I can do from the sideline. There's only so much guys that will either receive the football, get it handed off to them, wait for that play call in the huddle. The defensive line position to me, nowadays in football with how people are being used at the college level and the growth of these, wildly athletic edge players, these edge rushers, the interior rush has been something that, we're always trying to find. But then it's great when you can find it with that first and second down flexibility to go be a run-stopping, impactful player on early downs as well. You know what those guys end up being? Top 10 picks.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's one of those things where you've got to either have the resources to acquire one of those players, or you have to look at it through the lens of how do we find those traits? Where do we find that skill set that we're looking for? And then let's build something around that player with the other 10 guys on the field that maximizes what they do well, and then tries to enhance the things that maybe they don't do as well coming into the league, and then set them on a trajectory to ultimately becoming the best player they can become, where their strengths become even stronger and those weaknesses grow to a part of their game that no longer people can attack.
Kevin O'Connell, KFAN, a few more to close. Gabe?
Yeah, Kevin, just understanding this process right now, seeing all 31 teams try to figure out where they should be, how they should draft, how they should do the free agency, how much of your awareness is on the competition in order to make the best decisions for the team, for the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, I think, you have to be aware of not only other people's rosters, you got to be aware of where they project in future years based upon, maybe how they see current players, how they see potentially players we're evaluating. Because ultimately, if it was just something where the Minnesota Vikings got their full selection of every pick or every player in this draft, it'd be a fun process. I joke with people all the time. Just imagine, I know people get stressed in their 12-person fantasy football league. They're waiting to find out, shoot, I either want to be the first pick or I want to be 12 because then I get 12 and then the first pick. And then we don't get that luxury. So we know currently where we are picking. We have the ability to add more picks. We have ability to take those picks and move around. But ultimately, we're trying to just add really good football players to our team that fit our culture, but also that push us to finding that standard, getting to that line. And it's just such a fun time of year for me to be in that evaluation mode and really learn about the players, learn about every position, the quarterback position, talk to corners, talk to receivers. Hey, what are you working on right now to be ready to go April 17th when we need you? It's a really cool process, and having gone through it myself and knowing I always work backwards from there's 1,000 things I would have done differently as a player. And I was telling one of the guys we were formal interviewing earlier, because they were, I always like to say, hey, you got any questions for us? We're firing all these questions at you. And that player asked me, what would you have done differently having gone through the combine? I said, oh, man, the combine was just the start. It's understanding every single day you are given an opportunity to grow and get better. And do not let any coach, do not let any GM tell you what you are or aren't. Just be ready to make them pay for the things they said that you couldn't do. Hey, I'm a possession receiver. Well, go freaking run a 4.44.
Right.
And hey, I'm a linebacker that didn't tackle all that well. Be the best dang tackling rookie linebacker in the NFL this year, and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. Besides your willingness to work hard and go be a part of something great.
The running back stable, and the two teams that just were in the Super Bowl, Philadelphia, who we played this year, KC, you get them next year. And with the Eagles, of course, the quarterback runs, but then you have Sanders. Gainwell kind of became the identity in Boston Scott. Kansas City's identity of its running game was the 7th-round rookie from Rutgers.
Yep.
What I'm getting at is, does that approach influence you moving forward in any way when it comes to like the stable or the way the Vikings will run in 2023?
I think it's an evolving thing, because I think there still is a place in this league for the featured back, and then what are the skill sets like around that guy that can maybe impact the pass game or maybe the short yardage goal line situations. You really want to complement in that running back room, regardless of what it looks like. And then it's the scheme. It's how you use them. It's what your guys, ownership of the line of scrimmage is up front. I've talked to a lot of people about this, but yes, you mentioned those runners, and you mentioned kind of the committee approach that those teams look. You know what they didn't take a committee approach with? Those 5 guys up front, moving people off the line of scrimmage.
Great point.
And just watching the way that those teams played. And we're always going to. One of the fun things this time of year we do, in addition to evaluating free agency and the draft, is we do some studies. We do some studies around the league. What did we not do well? And let's go study the teams that did it well.
Gotcha.
I wouldn't go so far to say it's a copycat league. I do see a lot of our plays ending up showing up around the tape around the league. But I will say this is the time where we can truly take something that we did a lot of great things, but, try to study things and evolve and get better.
Okay, last one. You elevated Grant Udinski to assistant quarterbacks coach. And why I bring it up is in getting to know him last year, he's a very bright young man, who came here from the Panthers. But what do you think about Grant?
Yeah, I had a really clear-cut approach to how I wanted to handle that position last year. It was not just a administrative, just help the head coach out with his schedule type position. Grant spent a ton of time with me doing football, sees defense, has had a defensive background in Carolina, working with multiple positions. Yep. He sees it. He can see it quickly. A lot of times, I tell our coaches, it's great that you see things on Monday morning, but I need to know about it a little bit before that. How about Sunday at 1 o'clock or before that if you can. And Grant was a huge thing for our offensive staff, our defensive staff. Guy knows football and knows the quarterback position. Gerard Johnson was a phenomenal addition to our coaching staff. But I told Gerard the day we hired him, I said, you're going to be a quarterback coach in the NFL in 2023. It's just going to be about when you get those opportunities, let's find the best one for you. And I think he found a great one down there with D'Amico. Home. Houston is home for Gerard. But Grant was in the quarterback room already. I know Kirk feels very strongly about Grant, as all our quarterbacks do, and Chris O'Hara, our quarterbacks coach. So a natural fit, a natural transition, but I'm going to steal him away quite a bit to still get the things that I need from Grant. But very fortunate, PA, with our whole staff. I know you've gotten to know a lot of these guys. Feel very blessed in what was a year ago, seeming like it was a sprint, not a marathon as far as putting together that coaching staff. I feel really good about the guys we have, and the new additions will make us an even better football team.
Great chap. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, PA.
Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, back to Indianapolis after this.